Well, John, I entered 10 puns into a contest to see which one would win. No pun intended.
Well, that's
No
unfortunate.
pun intended, Mariam.
Well, actually, sorry, I got to say something too, Talos. Sorry if you hear my pet wolf in the background, but he should be quiet though because I'm trying to teach him how to meditate. Over time, I'm hoping he'll be a werewolf.
Nice. Nice.
Nice.
Got two dads
Let's
doing
not
dad
have
jokes,
two
buddy.
dads on the show ever again, Mel. Like ever again.
Hey, Talos
The
is
scores are
outnumbered,
now
so-
even.
There's just way too much dad joke vibes. Oh my goodness. Welcome everyone to the Masterful Morning Show. We're so delighted to have John Nguyen here with us. We are acquaintances through a Sean Croxton community, of course, like so many of our other guests. And one of the things that made John stand out to us was that he liked to juggle whenever, he needed to get moving during some of our longer Zoom calls. Certainly made an impression. And I have been listening to his new podcast, Nguyen From Within. So, John, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and the podcast?
Hey, Marion, so happy to be here. I actually first want to start, if you don't mind, start off by acknowledging you, Talos, and Melanie. You guys just cracked 100 episodes again, and it's a huge milestone. It's definitely something that I'm striving for again for this year, but you guys put in the hard work and definitely enjoying and reaping the benefits from your hard work as well. So I want to acknowledge you guys there. So I'm John. I am first and foremost husband to my wife. One of the best decisions I made was to be with her. And of course, my son, I'm a dad to my son, and he is the light of my life, of course, too. Full time, I am a dentist, biological dentist, trying to, I guess, bring beautiful smiles to otherwise nervous and anxious filled patients. But on the whole, I'm just a human being trying to help people who feel helpless become stronger and realizing their light and their strength that's actually within themselves too. I've done everything from weightlifting, bodybuilding, functional medicine, bioregulatory medicine. I've done a lot of different things just because when I was young, it goes back to like when I was a little kid. Up until very recently, I've experienced many points in my life where I felt kind of helpless myself. The first memory that I have that kind of jumps out at me is when I was younger, I was bullied. So naturally, as I got older, I started to work out and try to solve that insecurity about myself, right? And also another thing I don't think I mentioned in the podcast was when I was actually younger, and this might be hard for some people to believe, is that I was made fun of. I was laughed at a lot of times when I tried to speak out loud or to speak my mind in class. And I distinctly remember being in the library and the librarian asking me to pronounce library, the word library, right? And at that time, I for whatever reason couldn't do it. I would pronounce it as library, and so the kids just like erupted in laughter, and I remembered like really just breaking down and crying. And now, like it just goes that like insecurity, that pain, that memory doesn't define me, of course, but it just goes to show that as long as you practice and put in the work, that a lot of the insecurities, the feelings of helplessness that I had before, it can be overcome. And it just takes some commitment. It takes some self-image reworking. It takes some persistence and not giving up on yourself and who you want to be. And that again is my mission. It's just I hate the feeling of being helpless. I hate it when I see other people feel helpless as well, like they feel like they don't have control or autonomy in their lives. They feel like they don't have a way out. And sorry if I'm bringing another thing up, but most recently for me was I had a bad case of eczema on my hands. And I was told that there's nothing that can be done. You're going to live with this your entire life and just keep on taking steroids. And I didn't want to believe that. So I stopped taking the steroids and it got crazy bad. But I worked on different things like stress management. I worked on diet. I worked on different things to kind of bring my body and my mind and my soul into balance. And through that, the eczema is pretty much 99% managed. And this is probably unheard of outside of, I mean, inside of Western medicine, it's unheard of because they can't really explain it, right? But when you look at things like functional medicine, you look at bioregulatory medicine, you look at meditation, for example, too, things like Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about, you can manifest these things. And that's the beautiful thing about Masterful Manifestors, right? You guys talk about things that aren't really accepted, I guess, in the Western world. I mean, of course, it's gradually being accepted, but it's awesome that you're spreading that message, you, Talos, and Melanie. So that's me in a nutshell, I guess.
That's so powerful, and everything that you said as far as what's really stood out to me is how like you would see a problem or you would feel something within you, a lack or something that you didn't feel was right. And instead of, so often a lot of times we get overwhelmed and we feel like trapped and we don't know what to do. And I know from past experience of my life, I've like either shut down or just like tried to block it out. But you really looked for a solution. You said, when you were getting bullied, you at least were looking for a solution by bodybuilding and going forward, moving forward. And then also, with eczema, and then, now you have a podcast and you're very outspoken. And it's like you've looked at things that have bothered you. And instead of, like you said, letting it define you, you've really shifted your framing around it and moved toward it instead of, shutting down or anything. And that's so powerful and such a good lesson for all of us to learn and look at and to understand to move forward in it. So that's a beautiful example for you to provide to us. And it just seems like, a lot of things that you do, that's more of what defines you, is moving forward. And what's so great about that is as you take those steps, it may not have the idea that you have right off the bat may not be the end solution, but you're moving forward on it and you're taking action. And as you do that, things will open up to you. So that's beautiful and powerful. What is one thing that you have discovered from within you right now that you would say is probably one of your biggest strengths as far as connecting with others, to be able to bring that out or to be able to make them recognize something within them that they have?
So I really, first of all, thank you for that too. Thank you for acknowledging that. But the main thing for me is to connect with somebody else. You have to connect with yourself first. And one of the things that I mentioned in my podcast was when my son was born and when he was younger, I had a lot of internal demons as well. On the outside, I could see myself appearing pretty calm, pretty even keeled to a lot of people. But a lot of it, I think, was repressed, right? So when my son came along, up until that point, at least, I controlled a lot of things. I was able to control my life a lot, right? And as you know, with kids, you can't control kids, right? At least you should not control kids because I feel like my job and jobs as parents is to guide our kids to realizing their best selves, right? And here I was trying to control my son. And for a while, it's still an ongoing process, of course, but it wasn't until I really asked myself the question, like, what am I doing? Like, is this who I want to be to my son? Like, I won't accept that, right? And because I didn't accept that, I knew that there had to be a better answer to how I was treating my son too. And from that, I was able to just like look at other like teachers, philosophies, just even within myself through journaling, right? Asking myself that question and just like writing self out, because most of the answers that you will find, if they're not outside, most of them are within yourself. And a lot of times we don't take the time to really dive deep into our own philosophy, what we want out of our own lives too. And I think from within, that's the biggest strength for me, I believe, is to come from a place of love. So when I was able to accept myself more, and also come to kind of talk to myself in a more compassionate way, in a more gentle way, and to realize that up until then, I was only doing the best that I could do, knowing what I know or knowing what I knew. And to have that compassion for myself and to love myself from there, I was able, and I am still able to be more compassionate towards my son, towards my wife, towards everybody else, right? But most of the time, a lot of us, we want to just be acknowledged, right? And we want to come from, we want other people to acknowledge us, but we want other people to love us as well. And so sometimes we do crazy things to get that love. As kids, like it's crazy. Like we think our kids are like out of their minds or whatever, right? But they really only want us to acknowledge them, and they want to know that we love them no matter what. So I think that's a strength of mine. It doesn't make me impervious to rage or anything, but it's whenever I go back to that, I know that I'm living my highest value and my highest self.
So I just I couldn't get past the fact that you had so much trouble with your hands when you work with your hands. That must have been quite a challenge, particularly wearing gloves and sanitizing and hand washing. That's quite remarkable, John.
Thanks for that. Yeah, sorry to cut you off, but it's true. A lot of people ask me if my hands got burnt. They ask me like, "What happened? Like, what'd you do to your hands?" Or like, "What happened? Are you okay?" And a lot of times, the gloves help me in the case in the way of it just covered it up, right? So I wouldn't be as embarrassed or whatever. But whenever I changed gloves or washed my hands, and people would ask me that, it was definitely a sore spot for me for sure. So thanks for bringing that up.
No worries. So, what inspired you to do the podcast? Because you go into quite deep levels of what obviously from within. What inspired you to go there with that?
So I would say off the top of my head, two things inspired me to do it. One is um, I recently took this character values assessment recently, and it was I think by Martin Seligman, who's something or who's like I think researcher or psychologist of positive psychology. He's a father of positive psychology, and I think the number one value of mine is love of learning. So I always love to learn. I've always loved to learn ever since I was younger. The only thing is, if you believe in like balance, right, the yin and the yang, I was taking in a lot of things. There was a lot of yin, so taking a bunch of information, right, but there was nowhere it was going. So for me, the impetus is I've always kind of wanted to do something, teach something, and I just, I mean, through Money Mind Academy, through different mentors, through journaling, I asked myself, why am I keeping this in? This information is useless unless I help other people with it. And I've spent all these years, all this time learning how to become stronger, right? But I'd be so selfish if I just kept it in. And so the selfish part of me is for me to express more yang, to express more of myself, and to let it out too. The unselfish part is to help other people. And the second reason is to show to my son that I can do something. You know what I mean? Um, when he grows up and he asks me, "Oh, what did you do?" Right? I don't want to talk to him and tell him like I really want you to go for your dreams and do something that you're passionate about, help other people. But I never had the courage to do that. So that's huge for me. Those are the two reasons.
It's powerful. Um, so part of our self-development journey is intention. You know, you're not just going to grow without putting intention behind it. So I'm curious if there's any like habits or routines that you instill into your life so that you are being intentional about your growth journey, and what has been like the most impactful for your own growth.
So definitely just me time. Waking up early in the morning, 5:30 or so in the morning. Um, Visualizing has been huge for me ever since I started implementing it through Money Mind Academy. And journaling, of course, too, just like asking myself questions. And it's funny because I've been journaling on and off for probably a few years now. And I recently looked back at my old entries and I thought, who the heck wrote this, right? It's actually pretty deep stuff, pretty pretty deep things that were written there. So it's just a great reminder that if you are writing stuff down, sometimes we may not want to revisit them, but a lot of times when you reflect back at it, you can see how far you've grown, but you can see how much wisdom that you actually have too. That's been pretty big for me. Those two are pretty much non-negotiables and have had the most impact in my life by far whenever I'm intentional about doing those things. But I actually have a little framework for that too. And for me, energy for the day, and this is going back to Albert Einstein's definition of energy equals mc squared, right? So with me, um, energy is E, M is movement. I try to move every day. Two, the second M is to meditate, to have some silence with myself too. And those, if you can tell, like they're both balanced, right? So one's yin, one's yang. And then the two C's are to create. So create something, express myself, right? And the second C is to connect. So either connect with myself, connect with a loved one, connect with the Money Mind Academy family, connect with anybody on a deeper level, not on the surface level, but on a deeper level. Um, and what I've been actually doing is I've kind of been sending people messages, try to send it at least once a day, messages of encouragement, messages of gratitude towards them too. And it's just something on a selfish level, it lifts me up, but on the whole level, like as a human being, I like to hope that I'm raising the positive energy inside the universe.
That's a powerful equation there. It's a very well balanced and it's beautiful, absolutely. And John, really, I want to say I really appreciate, and if for those watching, really looking within. Like that really is where our answers are. And if you want to change your outer world, you need to go within. So hop on his podcast, listen to what he has to offer, and just take the time. It's not selfish to look within because you're changing the world really. So thank you so much, John. It's absolutely beautiful. Your messages here have been very powerful. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'd love to have people check you out. Where can people go to listen to you?
So podcast name is Nguyen From Within, Nguyen From Within. And if anybody wants to chat, I'd love to connect with deep thinkers, people who are on just a loving journey of service and also of self-development as well. So you can hit me up on @the_John_Nguyen on Instagram, or you could send me an email at john@nguyenfromwithin.com. And happy to answer any questions, happy to join any conversations, because we're all in this together for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for coming on the show, John.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on.